So we'll go ahead and start. I'm recording this mostly so that I can go back and refer to notes if need be, depending on how long our dialogue goes this evening. This is the policy committee for this school year, 1918-19. We have some new faces on our committee, which would be the normal routine, the way the administrative committees are set up. My name is Shawn Kraska. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education, and I am the chairperson and facilitator for this committee. I don't have a role in terms of voting or recommending or anything like that. My role is to welcome us all together and provide a forum and a structure for us to look at policy and make a recommendation for whatever the policies those are to our school board. And so we have several administrative committees, and I won't go into the details of each one because we're here for policy. But our administrative committees are our effort to gather broad stakeholder engagement around the business of our school board, if I've said that in a easily understood way. And so for policy committee, our school board has, I would say, hundreds of policies. And then related to those policies, we have administrative regulations. For policy purposes, for those that come up for review and come to the policy committee for review, we're looking at just school board policies. Normally when a policy is created or revised after the school board votes on a policy, then if an administrative regulation needs to be brought into alignment with that policy, we do that after the board makes a vote on whatever policy it is that we're changing. Before I go any farther, I just want to say thank you for everyone who has given up time to serve on this committee. Our goal is to meet a minimum of 4 times this year. Last year, after the committee process changed, we didn't meet 4 times. And if there's not a lot of policies in play or up for revision, we wouldn't. So once a quarter is kind of what we're looking at. One would think we would have things for us to look at and review and give a recommendation to the board that often. I will share, I want to share and be transparent that we have a couple other things in play this year. We are working within Chapter 9 of our policy, which is where tonight's policy comes from, but several policies through Chapter 9 we anticipate coming through the process and getting to the place of the policy committee. So the next time we meet, even though tonight we only have 1, we could have 6 or 7 next time. So it really just depends on how far through the process we get. Also, if you haven't been engaged in it at all, we have a comprehensive review of our entire school district discipline policies and procedures in play. That has been about, right now we're in about our 14th or 15th month of that. It's a 3-wave process, and we are heading into wave 3. We actually have a community forum for community members and parents next Monday night to share a lot of the input that has been taken and a lot of the kind of themes that have risen up and what policies within our discipline guidelines that we may be looking at for review. If as a school board we designate specific policies, I anticipate seeing those spring semester come to this committee in some fashion. So it won't just be all Chapter 9 stuff, okay? And down the road, it may not only be Chapter 9 stuff, but for right now, those are kind of the 2 biggies on our horizon. So with that, I'd like to start with Allison Lambert. And Allison, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hi. I'm Allison Lambert. I'm on the school board. I've been on for my 2nd term on the board.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Audrey George. I'm a parent. I'm a foster parent. I have 4 and 3 different schools and a teenager in middle school.
My name is Joshua Jones. I'm principal at Tanana Middle School.
Randy Pitney, on the committee well.
Tamara Cruz Rosales, and I've got a son at Lathrop and one that went all the way through the system. And I'll apologize, I just joined yesterday and I have to leave about half hour early.
That's okay.
I'm Corey Anthony. I'm the principal at Loud Elementary. Kelly Atley. I'm a parent. I have 3 that have gone, well, 1's still in school at West Valley and 2 that have gone kindergarten through graduation.
I'm Tammy Smith, and I'm a teacher at Barnett.
I'm Sean Jensen. I'm a teacher at West Valley. I teach history, geography, government.
I'm Eleanor Daziak. I'm a sophomore at Lathrop High School.
I'm Darrell Walker. I'm an electronics tech with facilities maintenance.
Great. So we anticipate a few more people joining our committee. And if you didn't look through the committee makeup, that is on page 2 of the administrative AR. We could be rounded out with 16 individuals on our committee, and our administrative regulation explains how many for each group are on there and how they land on there. Okay? So Tamara, no problem that you joined yesterday. We were happy to receive that email and notification, so welcome. And glad you're with us. Glad everyone's with us. So the role of our committee, and if you've been a part of the policy committee prior to last year, when the administrative committee structure changed a little bit, this might be a little bit different. Previously at policy committee, it was called actually policy review committee. And past practice was there was a lot of wordsmithing, and I'll call it, just a phrase I use frequently, getting down in the weeds of changing things around. And the focus of our committee after the restructure is to hopefully bring you a draft that has, I'll call it wordsmithed, and is ready, has been through an input process, has been through a research process, again, depending on the nature of the policy itself. And has been through a legal review. So tonight's policy had to do with homework. I'm not sure there's a lot of legality around that, the way it reads, but all policies that come to this committee will have already gone through a legal review. So just know that and understand that. And so when you're reading it now, you're reading it through the lens of, is this policy, the way it's presented here, does this committee recommend this policy, or does it recommend the school board pass this policy or not? And either, wherever this committee falls, is fine. My role is to take input as to why or why not and share that. Policies, we all work under the policies, but policies are the board's to approve or not approve. So let's just go through a hypothetical before we start talking about this one. We could talk about a particular policy as presented here, not homework tonight, just a particular policy, and this body could say, yeah, we feel good about this. We could all talk and give our engagement and our input about it. I would write that down, another reason I'm recording, so I get it right. And then when it comes up on one of the agendas for the school board, if I happen to be the person talking about it, or maybe our teaching and learning department or whomever, when the school board goes to first reading, they're going to ask some questions, and that's appropriate. And so I would share at that point, the policy committee recommends or does not recommend the school board pass this policy, and then I would say why. Okay, and the school board, I would say, is very interested in this committee's input and the input that has come from all of the stakeholders, and that will continue to come from stakeholders. But let's say we all unanimously, or I'm not in the vote, but you decide yes, the policy is great. It could get to the school board, and through 2 readings and additional input, some amendments are made at the school board level. It would not come back to this committee when that happened. We're giving our recommendation. We're a body of assorted viewpoints representing different factions, the community, parents, our support staff organization, our teaching organization, our principal organization, our students. And so we are giving a recommendation, and then from there it goes to the board. And they basically own the policy, is the way I like to think about it, and they will edit, tweak, or simply approve as it is. Okay? So hopefully everyone came tonight and has read the policy. We only have one policy tonight that we're talking about. I went ahead and emailed you the input collected so far. This policy has been taken to executive directors, to district administration, to school administration, K-12, And to run through FEA, the FEA president now gets a copy of policies as they go through the input process. And so teachers and support staff have had an opportunity. At first reading, this will also have another push out so that parents and community members can give direct input to the board through whatever means they want. They can email the board, they email district administration, they come and give public comment, which we anticipate could happen. So lots of engagement still to happen around this, okay? So what I'm going to do is, in the packet there is some input. I have representatives from our teaching and learning department who are here who took input when this policy first went out last February. It went out initially last February. They gathered input, wove some of it into the version you're seeing now. They also have best practice research done. That's woven into some of this now. And so they're here for questions if we have them. Okay? If we don't, that's okay too. They're happy to just be here and be able to answer questions. So what I would like to do is open it up for comment or discussion if there is any. And if we have lots, I'll just take a speaking order and call on people. Okay? At some point, I will say, let's take a recommendation. We're going to recommend this or not, and I will write that down and make sure I have gathered all the possible yays and nays of why we may or may not want to approve this.
First
Okay.
on the procedure, say 15 people like it for the reason of A, B, C, D, E, F, G,
Yep.
and it passes 15 to 1. And the one person that doesn't has reasons X, Y, and Z. Do all the logic go to the board, or just the reason?
So I view my job as trying my best to present every view that is shared. So let's just walk that through, Randy. If 15 people voted yes and 1 no, I would say 15 members of our 16-person committee supported this for a variety of reasons, and I would summarize those. We have one individual who felt very strongly no, but had some great reasons, and here are those reasons, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So I want to do my best job just as the chairperson to try and represent what was shared in the discussion. Okay? Okay. Anyone have any comments? Or let me back up. Anyone have any questions from our teaching and learning representatives? They're behind us. Mel Hadaway, the executive director, Christina Rohrig, one of our curriculum coordinators. So we can ask them questions through the process if you want, but again, not required. Sean?
So what are the theories or philosophies or influences that drove the idea to let's take out this policy and let's make these changes to it?
It was a direct request from our school board.
Okay.
So I'll walk through that since we have some new faces. When a request is made to have this policy reviewed, whoever is responsible for the upkeep, if you will, that's probably a poor choice of words, the revision of anything in those chapters is assigned to do that work. All things in Chapter 9 reside in the teaching and learning department. I'll give you a different example. All things in Chapter 4 of school board policy reside in the business and purchasing department. Okay? All things in Chapter 1 reside with the school board and the superintendent. So Chapter 9 policies, when and if they come up for revision, have to start with the teaching and learning department. Okay? Did that help, maybe?
I can add. If there's a consensus of the board, then the policy will come up for revision.
Thank you. I didn't say consensus.
Can that be initiated just by a request from one individual?
It's usually a consensus.
Okay.
So somebody will bring it up.
If I had a concern about a policy and I went to the school board, would the school board take the input of one single person to review a policy?
They would take the input, and then it would probably either come up in some sort of either a work session, or somebody would make a comment of it during at the end of the school board meeting, and when we're making our comments and say, I've had this and request to update this policy. If there's a consensus at the time to look at a policy, then it would be at that point in time, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Lambert. So to help alleviate, I don't want the impression to be that one person thought this, or it does have to come through a consensus of the board to get to a place where we start revision process. Ms. Anthony?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could maybe start with some questions that are probably for teaching and learning that came up at my school, and that I also saw here in the document here about some of those questions of what really is homework and what isn't, whether it's like the practice of your violin, whether it's missed days of school and you're making up some of that work at home. So some of those kind of detailed things would help me understand the policy in general. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's too vague of a question.
So I don't want us to feel like we can't relax a little bit and have conversation. We're all here for the same purpose. So I'm going to ask Ms. Rohrig and Ms. Hadaway to come up front so that our backs aren't to them. Or they can sit at the table. It's fine. Again, they're not voting. They're a voice. Okay.
We're a voice. So I think, Ms. Anthony, your question about what makes homework, I think is is a really good question, and it was one of the things that Sean and I talked about that's come out of the feedback and that we got from the policy. We talked about, and I was just trying to pull it up, and of course you can't find it right when you're looking for it, but that's, activities designed to sort of do these things. So the big issue that came up in a lot of it, and in the conversations that I had with folks, was over if it's graded or not. Mm-hmm. So a lot of elementary people shared that they send home homework, which they really mean are activities for practice at home that aren't incorporated in their grade for kids. And so, I think that's something that will be, interesting to see how it evolves. I mean, and to see what a next draft might look like. So one teacher really spent time talking about, her suggestion was that we talk about activities to promote practice and parent engagement separately from homework, which on the phone she described as, I'm going to paraphrase, those traditional worksheets that we all got sent home, do 1 through 14 even, and bring it back. She's like, that I don't want it, but I get when my teacher sends home, here's practice to do with your kid. So sort of there. And I don't know how we turn old school homework sheets, into policy language yet. But that was her distinction, was sort of those activities versus graded, sort of that traditional homework where you go home. So I don't know if that answered that question, kind of?
It hit near it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think that was helpful to maybe understand that that's part of what we're doing, is trying to define what homework is and what homework isn't.
Well,
or no.
Well, in the most general sense, to me, homework is work that is sent home with students.
Yeah.
So, and to me, the piece that I think I've had new thinking was, to me, work that's sent home with students that they're expected to do and return to school. Mm-hmm. So, in that case, is work that we send home with students, but then we don't expect them to do it and return to school. Is that an activity versus homework? So I think a definition of what makes homework will be something that we'll have to look at as we clarify.
That's not in the policies now.
Well, it is right here.
Homework is
defined as activities designed A, B, and C.
Right.
That is.
And the difference being, I think, in Mr. Jones, so what that doesn't say is designed to do those things, and kids are expected to bring them back to school. So because and it was a parent and teacher that I talked to, she said, I like those things coming home. The part that she did not necessarily want kids to be penalized for is, if my family doesn't get all of those done and brought back to school, I don't want my family penalized for that. So it takes that definition that's in and takes it farther. And I don't, and again, I am not the all-knowing. I think that, how this evolves and what where it goes as part of that is based on clarification and what our community defines as homework. You guys are parents, I think. I am looking forward to hearing those different perspectives of really what does make homework versus what is just good stuff to bring home and practice. And I have just for full disclosure, I'm a secondary English person, so my perspective on homework is, I have my parent hat, but from a teacher point of view, it's different than I know that what elementary does is very different in terms of homework.
Mr. Pitney was next.
I like the whole colored pages, that's the yellow. I like the whole thing when I read it, pretty much, with the exception of no homework for elementary. I don't know where it is, but no work for elementary kids. I think that's bad. I don't think there should be a lot, but you got to start practicing time management, and let's not wait until they're over 13 years old before all of a sudden now you got homework. I'd like to see them maybe not lost, but start the ball kind of rolling, so that we're gradually working up to getting splattered with lots of homework.
Okay.
Sorry, this is to go backwards a little bit. So you're the subject matter experts on this, but could you tell me again your role? And I know, Sean, you said this was what chapter?
This is Chapter 9, which is all things curriculum and instruction and student evaluation.
Okay, so tell me the connection.
Like, who are we?
Great question. Great
I
question.
day I could answer that question in lots of ways. So, teaching and learning is, we used to just, when I started in this, we were just the curriculum department. So it's expanded. So we now include like testing and assessment, libraries, a lot of anything sort of instructional and curriculum. And I sort of tend to talk about curriculum as the what we teach, and instruction is sort of the how we go about teaching those things. In a very general way, those things sort of fall under the purview of teaching and learning. So I'm the executive director of teaching and learning. My name is Melanie Hadaway, and Christina Rohrig bravely agreed to come on as our secondary curriculum coordinator just right before school started. And so not everything, so Chapter 9 includes, every sort of teaching and learning, sort of, what defines curriculum, what are our materials. It also talks a lot about special education, so there are actually parts of Chapter 9 that even though they fall under curriculum, like the special ed department is involved in drafting sort of all of those policies. So whereas I'm the person who has the permission to go in and change them in the policy board docs, they involve more people than just us. And so curriculum, CTE graduation requirements, all of how you calculate a GPA, everything sort of falls in Chapter 9. And one of the things that actually is really difficult is that we start talking about homework, and pretty soon we're talking about grades. And we actually have a separate policy on grades than we do on homework. So it gets a little bit mushy sometimes as we work through all these. And that's one of the challenges that Sean and I work through, trying to figure out what's the best place to start. Like, do we start with this? And then it goes down, yeah.
I think that was more my question. Homework is defined here, but from what you were saying, is it defined in a policy such as that? Because what you were talking about is activities versus homework. This would include activities that weren't necessarily graded.
So this draft really is our current sort of working definition. So that's the question is, do we need to shift that definition or expand it or clarify it or what that might be?
So this would say that in general you shouldn't even send elementary kids home with those sheets to practice. And I don't know if that's what you mean to say.
Yeah, so great question. Let's pause there just for a minute. I realized I faltered on something. I want to make sure everyone understands what's in front of them. So if you look at the yellow sheet, anything that is in what I'll call normal print, it's not bolded, it doesn't have strike through, and it's not underlined. So any of the text that's just normal text that isn't struck through, bolded, and underlined is original text. That's the original policy right now as it exists. The additions or suggested changes, the revisions that we're looking at to include are everything struck through, underlined, and in bold. So bold and underlined is new language to the policy. It's embedded here in the existing policy. Anything with a line all the way through it, so if you look at the very first line where it says, is an integral element, we're saying take that phrase out. So just for clarification, the very first sentence says, if we were to approve this policy, and if the board approved it as is, I'm not suggesting that will happen yet, we've got some work to do, it would read in our policy manual once approved, the district believes that homework can be an effective element of the learning process. Homework shall be directly related to what is being studied in class and shall not be used as a disciplinary measure. The entire next 2-3 sentences are struck, and that first paragraph would end with, homework is defined as activities designed, A, to practice and apply skills. B, to enrich learning experiences. C, to extend educational experiences related to class. Stop. Then the whole next section, bold and underlined, is all new language. And then continue on. To meet educational needs, comma, teachers will provide timely feedback to the student on submitted homework assignments in order to address misunderstandings related to learning objectives prior to assessing student learning on graded assessments. In addition, teachers shall communicate with families on homework processes and expectations to facilitate completion and encourage parent involvement in student learning. The intent is for assignments to encourage parent involvement. However, a student's homework cannot require an action by parents or an adult in order to earn a grade. How I read that would be, if all things passed as is right here, that would be how the new policy reads. Anything with a strike through would not exist, and all new language added would. So hopefully that helped. So I want to go back because Tamara's question was still on the table. So your question related to activities and homework. Tamara, did I get that right?
Yes, I was going off of what Melanie had said, that maybe activities were something different than homework. But as I read this, the activities would be that practicing and applying at home. Some people would still say, this is homework and I'm not supposed to be getting homework.
Okay.
And I think, I don't know if it's helpful, but like I sort of read this as there's that first section, which is kind of here's the definition of homework. The second section is sort of like here's the guidelines for giving homework. And then there's sort of the best practices in terms of timely feedback, not requiring parental action. So sort of those, there's sort of like three chunks to it. So I don't know if that helps either. So that definition piece, I think that idea of do we need to change that definition to talk about activities will be something.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going, because I have 3 in elementary, and the time involved in doing all their homeworks. And then we get done with it and they're like, oh, we didn't have to do that. That was just practice. And it's like, well, I didn't see that anywhere in here. So we're doing a lot of work all the time, and then we're building a native village for the 3rd time. I have a 21-year-old, so she built the native village. My son built one. And another one's did. And I'm like, I should have just kept the same one. and then what about the 6-week out book reports that are due in middle school? Is that homework, or is that a in-class free time project type thing, or is that what they're trying to stop doing? And then the not graded part, I like the practices because I see how they're developing and learning to spell and learning to do their math. And I like to see their progress, but I think I messed up. I don't know if they're doing subtraction the same way, you know. I don't know if they're multiplying the same way. I was like, this makes sense to me, so this is what I'm doing. And I don't know if I messed her up for life or whatever, but...
For life, yeah. Unlikely. You did the same thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Especially in math.
Yeah.
So that I like having the idea of a parent involvement and not have it depending on the grade, because I'm leaving in the morning for 5 days for work. I'm at a policy meeting from 5:30 to 7 tonight. My daughter's doing dinner. I hope she's working on homework. Otherwise, it's into our bath time and bedtime routine to spend another hour or half hour on each kid to do their homework. And, it's time consuming. It's really, and I don't, like I said, I don't mind the encouraging parent involvement and practice, but the amount that's being required right now is overwhelming.
Thank you, Audrey. Mr. Jones is next.
So I just want to...
And they're elementary.
Yes.
Did you have your hand up before?
Was it before you?
I think it was. So you go ahead and I'll go after you.
I have Eleanor on the list, so let Eleanor go.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to address the point of
required summer homework should not be assigned at any grade level, because I figured that that would be sort of a point of contention. I know that within my school, teachers and students, and it's just a discussion I've had with a lot of people, so just like a few things and then possible solutions. So I think one reason that this would be potentially good is that Fairbanks has a large military population, so we have transfer students coming in who don't necessarily have the opportunity to do the summer homework. So when they're coming in to school late or just at the beginning of the school year, they're already behind, and that it's nearly impossible to catch up with an entire summer's worth of assignments. There's also the issue of AP classes, which I know was addressed in the comments. So one con, I think, that definitely came from personal experience is, so I'm taking AP Euro at Lathrop, which was it almost wasn't a course this year, but it was reinstated at the last minute. And for that reason, we didn't have summer homework, and that's actually set us back quite a bit. And there were, I think, 3 materials that we didn't get to read, and so that's discussions we couldn't have, ways we're not prepared for the AP exam. But I think that since summer homework is usually assigned to AP or honor students, those students should be motivated enough to do unrequired homework, and I think possible solutions to the students not doing it would be extra credit, and then not necessarily grading the work over the summer, but discussions and quizzes on the reading or required research as soon as classes start in school.
Yeah. Thank you, Eleanor.
So 2 things. First, I'm curious what would happen if this was not revisioned but rewritten, and if we had nothing, what would it look like if we wrote a brand new homework policy where we weren't trying to just eliminate and add different things? And I'm not sure where that falls in the purview of the school board and whether or not they can say start from scratch or not, but I think that would be an interesting experiment to see what would happen. The second thing is in line with what Ms. George here said next to me. I don't think the school should be in the business of telling families how to spend their time at night. And this last sentence down here, especially, the intent is for assignments to encourage parent involvement. However, a student's homework cannot require an action by parents or adults to earn a grade. And that idea, to bring up the idea of equity, that we're punishing kids for not having a parent there who can be engaged with them if that's out of their control. But I think that's a red herring anyway. The fact of the matter is we have the kids for 6.5 hours during the day. If we can't meet all their academic needs during that time, then we need to adjust what our expectations are to be able to meet their needs in that time.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Atley?
Just a quick question. So in reading through the paperwork, and you just mentioned it too, the term equity sounds like, I'm not sure what that, I know what equity is. But in terms of this, is that how this evolved is based on equity, and what does that mean in regards to homework?
Do you want to answer that?
If I may give my not politically correct version.
Okay, those are the ones that
So,
the real ones.
Yeah, equity is a red herring when we want to make something work for us. And so in education, when we use equity as a coverall to say that we are not being fair to certain groups because of whatever reason. And so my belief is that we often say that so that we can get away with doing something that we really want to do but don't have good evidence or research to back it up. And so that's my personal thought on it.
Okay, so that's one school of thought. Go ahead, keep going, Jessica. Not all of us would do on it like that, but that's okay.
In this particular situation, you can argue an equity issue on both sides of it. So you can say that it doesn't provide equity to students who don't have the parent support at home, that if we say no homework, then the students whose parents will take them out and do cool things with them and help them learn, that is an equity issue for those whose parents won't do that. You can also argue on the other side that parents that by assigning homework, we're making it more difficult for students who are disadvantaged to be able to do that homework. Does that make a little bit more sense?
It does, but it sounds like life.
That's right.
And I'm not certain if the school board should. I was going to be politically incorrect.
Say it. You can say it. We're free to speak here.
I'm not certain that that's
not
the
attribution.
school board's or the school district's role to define that for anybody. I mean, certainly it's a social issue, but it's been around a long time and it will continue to be around a long time. So, just really quick.
So that's to my point about if we can't do it during the school day, that's our problem. That's not the kids and the family's problem.
So, question for Allison, in terms of, was there something about whoever the parent or the teacher was that brought this to the school board to say, hey, can we review this? There was consensus among the school board that yes, we should review it. What was the purpose that there was consensus with the school board that yes, we should review this?
So just to give you, just to start with, reviewing it doesn't mean it has to be changed.
No, I know that, but I'm assuming there was enough interest, and what was that interest based on?
The amount of homework that elementary students are coming home with and the frustration that parents have at home in assisting their kids with the homework nightly.
And I would, can I?
Yes.
Because we get, the school board, and I'm not privy to all of the input that comes to them, the assistant superintendent for elementary, as well as myself, throughout the year, get similar input. And sometimes it's subject matter related, sometimes it's grade band related, elementary, middle, high. Frequently a lot of stuff about summer, which goes to Eleanor's point about AP. I've been an AP teacher, so I know both sides of that argument. And there are two sides to that argument. I think it's fair to say, and Allison certainly can speak to this, that it's not one voice, one complaint, or one concern. It's been a growing concern over a period of years.
Yeah.
And it just...
Since 1984.
Yeah, well, whatever. I haven't been here since 1984, but so that's kind of a general way of saying I don't want our group to make an assumption that one or two people said this is ridiculous. I have a science project I don't like or something like that. But it's more contextual. It's over a period of time. And again, I need to clarify. I'm not privy to all of that input. The school board gets emails and Kate LaPlante, the elementary assistant superintendent, before that Sandy Kowalski, we field questions like that frequently.
Is it safe to say that it has more to do with volume? The homework complaints and the homework concerns.
So obviously, in teaching and learning, there again, like the school board stuff, we get a lot of concerns. I will also say that this policy hadn't been reviewed since 1991. So part of my job as executive director is to go through policy, right? And we're looking at things and saying, hey, we went through chapter 9. We started 2 years ago, sort of looking through that. And there is research about good homework practices and bad homework practices. And so as we were getting feedback that said, hey, we've got issues with homework, have you taken a look at it? Then we go through chapter 9 and say, man, we haven't looked at this since 1991, and here's what the research and current research says about homework. So all of that sort of comes into a review. So there are going to be reviews. We've gone through chapter 9 and looked at language that no one has mentioned to the school board in forever, but we don't have videotape. We're not going to keep looking at videotapes anymore. So there's some of it that is just also a process of regular review of policy.
So it doesn't necessarily have to come to the school board for a policy to be reviewed.
Okay.
It can, and then we would have a consensus of that, but it can be triggered in many other ways. The superintendent can trigger a policy look, and the administration and the different departments. So it's just one of the ways.
So next, were you done? Because Tammy's next.
But you go and then
come back.
Also, then yes.
Okay. Tammy.
Kind of because are the complaints or the concerns more at the upper elementary or at the lower elementary? Do you have any question on that? Or any information on that? Any data? That's really what I'm getting at. Is it more of a kindergarten, K1, 2, or is it 3, 4, or is it 5 and 6?
So, for full transparency, they don't all come to me. I can tell you that the bulk of elementary ones are across the board. And the ones that I have experience with, I'm sitting here, are not all content related, but very much math related. I'll share that. And it's not just kindergarten, it's not just third grade, it's not just sixth grade. It's across the board, and I would say math, even beyond elementary.
And I would say not, I hear a lot in various conversations with parents about the purpose of homework. So not just, and oftentimes it's not elementary, but about, I'm thinking of a conversation I had last week with a parent who, it started off in one direction and ended up being a really interesting conversation about the frustration of a lot of hours spent for what he very strongly felt was not helpful, useful homework. That idea of homework as busy work. So I hear that. That's what I hear across the board, more than even how much the hours spent. But that I hear a lot of feedback on homework not being useful and not being helpful to students. So, and that's, I think, spread across the board. I kept track of how many over the last few years. I don't have that kind of data, but that's the feedback that I tend to get.
Audrey, and then back to Kelly.
I had another one I forgot to mention too. It doesn't say anything about excluding any kind of things, because like my son went moose hunting for a week, missed school, and he had a bunch of homework to catch back up. That's excluded. I didn't see a wording for that in here to say.
Oh, so that's a good clarification. So in other words, if a student is absent and misses work, would the expectation be that they could take that work home and complete it? Is that what you're asking? Or you're not saying they should be exempt from that. You're saying if they miss schoolwork, have an opportunity
to get graded because you have to keep up with the class.
Okay, that's a good point. I'll make note of that. These are all good. All good comments. That's why we're having policy meeting. Okay, and then Kelly.
So who made the changes that are on here? Was that the policy committee or?
No, you're the policy committee.
Okay, well, but I didn't. But this is day one.
I know.
I've been here for a year or so.
That would be me for the most part. So, as we've met in various groups, Ms. Kraft and I have met. My department has reviewed. Again, we've gone through sort of all of Chapter 9. So we have that. We have input. We had input from the spring. We bring that to, in our world, the instruction lane. So we have executive directors and administrative center staff. But the actual, the typing of the changes is me.
Okay. And other people around the table having dialogue with all the input prior to, it's Mel's responsibility to type it, is our former director of secondary curriculum, April Scott, Holly Servin, who was the director of alternative programs. She's been involved. I know Michelle Damel's been involved in dialogue. So it takes kind of a team to come together and sift through.
Working committee to say, hey, let's phrase it like this.
Yeah.
So
the wordsmithing, if you will, in fairness. So Mel is responsible in her role to get it in the computer and get it in print like this.
Sure.
And indicate
what's that working group that says let's tweak it. So procedural question. Is it safe to say, since we're discussing it, that must mean that we're not ready to say, hey, we like it as written? Is that right?
So you're going to, before 7, recommend to the board to approve it or not.
Okay.
That's our role.
Okay.
And then the discussion we're having, which is why I'm recording this one, I will be summarizing so that when the school board asks on first reading, so they'll discuss it because they will have read it already. Sure. And by first reading with the school board, we will have already put out to the community. We normally put it out whenever the agenda is noticed, which is like Wednesday before a board meeting. The community will be invited to give input as well. So we're going to get a lot more input. We know that. And I should say the board. At that point, it's the board. The board will get a lot more input. And so here's how that could go. And Allison, correct me if I say this wrong. So the board could read this on first reading. I will have summarized this, give pros and cons as shared here, all of that. They will have this document, and we will continue to update this document if we get any more input between now and then, although the deadline to school staff was last Friday. And so they will get that. There will be a discussion, I would imagine, and this one goes on October 18th for first reading. At that point, the board could make a lot of choices. The board could wordsmith it right there as part of the board meeting. Probably not on first reading, but they could. The board could say, we're going to wait and see what input comes in. Okay? The board could get to second reading, which is 2 weeks later, so now we're into November, so you can see the time that's involved in something. And all this while, other input is coming in, whether it's emailed to the board, whether people show up at meetings or whatever. At that point, the board owns this policy. They could say, administration, we want to allow 3 more weeks for additional input. Okay, so then it's tabled, and we're just waiting. They could tell, the board could say, administration, we want you to go back and revise this. We want this kind of language included in it. Okay, so now this team has to come back together, go through the input again, look at the draft as it is now, take the input, all the different input, and try and coalesce around, okay, we're going to try and embed the changes here that the board would like to see. And then it would be represented.
So our role is not to come up with.
Our role is not to
language.
wordsmith. No, we're
It's
not.
to share our concerns
Yes.
about what's wrong with it and
Yes.
what might be missing.
Which is why I loved how Eleanor actually said pros and cons.
Yeah.
So I wrote those down. That was great. Okay. Eleanor.
So we've talked a lot about parent involvement, but what does parent involvement actually look like, especially in the context of families of high school students, and how does it benefit high school students? Because I know a big part of higher education is like taking responsibility for your own learning and doing stuff on your own, and I can't have my parents coaching me through essays. So what exactly does that look like?
That's a great question. What would we want it to look like, or what does that look like?
Both.
So I'm not going to answer. I'm going to leave that hanging in the air. I'm going to purposefully leave that hanging in the air. Okay.
Well,
I can. Yeah. Go ahead. We have some teachers around the table. Some high school teachers around the table. They can answer that.
And actually, I'm going to answer more of a parent point of view. And my daughters are now in their 30s and have kids, and thank goodness they got out of high school. So, not a lot of like my daughters were not like super studs. They were not the AP kids. They were the B and C kids, and I had to pull them sometimes really, really hard. And so I think we need to be careful not to assume that every child is going to be able to sit at home at high school and do all of this by themselves. Because I certainly didn't. And I, we got them through. They are very successful. But everybody is going to have different experiences, and we can't just think about the one kid that's going to be very, or the small population of kids that are extremely successful and don't need that support. My kids needed the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours a night or over the weekend, etc. So I'm kind of torn on this because philosophically this is a huge issue for me because I know some of the benefits of homework, and as a teacher I look at, oh my gosh, philosophically, how can I say there's not going to be any homework when I know what's coming up for them in college or tech school or on the job, whatever. And I want them disciplined. I want them to sometimes feel the pain of having to get a project done, because when you're on the job and you're being challenged by why you didn't get a job, get something completed, you need to be able to kind of go from that type of grit of what it takes. So I do philosophically have some concerns about not having any homework or even starting at elementary, but also how much, I think how much support should I or shouldn't I be giving them. The other piece to this is I want them, education is not just about being able to pass the test, it's about learning, and it's about education. And if I had to sit there with them while they got through, whatever book they had to get through, or, all the things they, carried, and I had to explain what that actually meant in the Vietnam War, that was learning, right? Yeah. And that was, as a parent, that was valuable enough for me, and I think that piece of homework is very important. Sometimes you have to share that experience. The other thing, we are working every single day in schools in groups. We do a lot of group work, we do a lot of socialized learning, and then we send them home and go, oh, you have to do this independently. And that's where the breakdown is, right? And some of that's good because when they go out, they're independent, but yet we kind of work in groups all the way around in different areas of our lives. So I think there has to be a balance there. That's my soapbox. What I am concerned is, as a teacher, the standards and the curriculum is huge. And if we don't have, I don't know where, I wish I did send more home. Actually, now I don't send any home because of the fact of the position I'm in as a resource teacher. But I started almost 40 years ago in 1881, and I was one of those teachers that I did a lot of homework. And I didn't find out until I kind of grew up a little bit and became that and talked to parents later on and said, man, you gave so much homework. And I was like, I did? I truly said, I had no idea. And I'm sad for that. As I got into a little further into my career, I made sure that the homework I sent followed. I always followed the 10-minute rule. And that is, I even read some research. I called my sister who's a doctorate in education and said, send me all the information you have on homework. So she sent it. That philosophy of your 10-minute rule has never gone away. And what I'm talking about there is when you're in first grade, you get 10 minutes of homework, and it's 10 minutes per grade level. That is the standard that is like saying, eat an apple a day. Or if you don't lose weight, you have to exercise to cut down your calories. There's nothing more you're going to be able to do. The 10-minute rule. So I kind of like to see us look at that piece of it a little bit. That's my concern. My last concern is, I don't know how, I don't know how we can limit homework at the elementary level and say only for reading when we have some vocabulary, when we have the I just talked to my principal today and said, these kids are not learning their math. I am concerned. But I can find some research on math homework, and it's not the amount, it's the quality. And I think that's where we still go to is, can we cover enough in 10 minutes? Can they do 5 problems of division, and that's enough so they have a slight connection? There is so much research that does say if you do something during the day and you do a 2 or 3 minute review of it at night, that there are significant brain connections that happen over the course of their season. That's when the brain repairs. So I would say, if I looked at this right now and said, would I vote to approve this? I would say no, because it doesn't meet all those other needs. I think there's a lot of good that is in this, but specifically as this is right now, I can't support this for those particular reasons.
Anyone? So I just wanted to add. I just want to add something. No, that's okay. No, I think it's great.
It's very insightful.
Yeah, it was. I just wanted to add something to what you said as an elementary teacher, because I ended up fielding a lot of elementary teacher phone calls. Kate was gone one day, and I think because if they tell Sean or Mel, so and I had a little bit of context. My husband was an elementary teacher for 27 years. So anyway, almost verbatim to what you just said, a couple other elementary teachers who took the time to call shared with me. And one of the qualifying questions, and I was waiting for you to say it, and either answer is good, so I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you, because I think it was important and it was enlightening to me. So I come from the secondary world, and I gave homework, and I taught APs, lots of APs and honors, and I taught struggling students. And some summers I didn't give any homework in AP or any other time. My students still did well on tests, vice versa. I wish I would have sometimes not. In elementary, I don't have that same level of experience. And the elementary teachers that talked to me said the same thing, like, I just need to send 3 math problems home or whatever, I need to send some multiplication reinforcement because it was so important and we did it in class. And we kept using this word, which is here. It's a paradigm we're all used to. It's homework. We're all somehow products of the school system. So we kept saying homework. And so then I said, so-and-so, is it graded?
Yeah.
And she said, no. But what this reads right now is you're saying I can't even send it. And I said, well, I didn't write it, but, I hear what you're saying. And she goes, I never grade homework, but I want the option to send it home. I want the homework to go home, and then the families can decide, do they have the capacity or whatever. And that's a family decision, and I'm not going to get into that dynamic. But it was fascinating to me because we were having this great conversation and we were talking about homework, and in my mind I know what homework is. I was also a parent, and I had one kid I had to pull through just like yours, and I had another kid I never even had to pay attention to. And I have a paradigm in my own mind, even in my role here, of what homework is. But when, at the end of the conversation, and this was 3 separate ones where they said, well, I don't grade it. But that's not what I'm calling about. I'm calling because this says I can't send it home. Other than reading, which everyone seems to unanimously fall around, reading is important, and I totally agree. But I need to send these math things home, or I need to send this project home, or these manipulatives, or whatever the case may be. There were 3 different examples. The light bulb went on for me, and I said, what do you mean? It's homework. And they said, well, activities. I need parents, I want my parents, it's my way of engaging with my parents, and this tells me I can't. So there was a lot of frustration from those phone calls because they were assuming that they couldn't send anything. And I said, and I just was real honest. I said, that's very fascinating to me because I helped with this dialogue, and I never once thought about it being graded versus not graded when the input was coming in. Because when someone says homework, we've talked about this, I immediately go to a grade. And what I recognized was that there's many, many teachers, and I would say it's K-12, we heard from a lot of them, and some of their inputs in here, but very much in the elementary world, they're telling us, at least, and I think we're going to hear more, it's the practice that's important, it's the engagement that's important, it's the hoping for the self-discipline, but it's not about a grade. And they said, Sharon, I teach 2nd grade. I'm not grading. That's not what I'm doing. I need to see that they know what they're doing. If what I taught 2 + 2 is 4 is getting across. And I said, okay, so I made a mental note of that because for me it was kind of eye-opening. I think I actually walked downstairs and said, I just had this fascinating conversation. So just to add to that. So Sean, and then Corey, and then Tamara. And now I'm writing down.
I thought several things Tammy said speak to what was on my mind as a high school teacher. Balance. There's balances in my mind as a teacher when I'm planning and when I'm thinking about how fast can I get through this overwhelming amount of curriculum that we are supposed to teach. I think in every subject is probably it is not reasonable and doable to teach everything that is written that we are supposed to teach. So a balance in this balance with homework in respecting that some of my students have jobs. And they are part of the income of the family. So I do assign homework. I think we're also teachers looking at this policy and realize we haven't been facilitated with a conversation about. So in the Global Studies Department, teachers get together and figure out what do you expect on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, how much time your homework takes for the average student, because it's going to take less for some students and a lot more for other students. Mm-hmm. Science department, how much do you figure? So West Valley, get together later. What do your departments figure? You're asking. Because part of this is talking about, respecting what other teachers are assigning. Also, a big problematic thing in here, and one of the reasons I am pretty strongly opposed to this, to recommending this, is that there's nothing facilitated here for us to get together and actually do this work. And pretty much every teacher I talked to at West Valley talked about a variety of different issues with homework, but that these changes don't fix those problems. So the balance, I wrote down 3 different types of balance issues here. So the family and work life, how much you have other subjects, balancing with other subjects. And then one reason that I am in favor of giving homework is that it adds to the balance of a variety of ways to learn and a variety of activities. Some students are catching up and learning more because they have time at home alone without social distractions to read more. And some students are getting more done in class and they're learning more with more interactive ways or Or I had a student yesterday that just told me she loves to hear me lecture and wish I would lecture more. I'm not a big powerful lecturer. So it's like, okay, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to do that a whole lot.
I'm not going to meet that need.
I don't get that compliment very much. So Tim mentioning the group work, there's so much group work that we are doing in schools and social interaction that I think it's good that there's some quiet individual time work that's done out of school. And so that's my 3 balance issues. And then switching to something kind of different, talking about grading it. There may be in the grading policies definitions of grading. When we talk about grading, parents, students, us, so I don't think we're on the same page on the definition of that. There is the grading I do. So is giving feedback grading? I don't know if we have a clear understanding on that. If I grade it and I say that it's 12 out of 15, I may or may not put that 12 out of 15 points into Power School. Does graded mean it gets entered in Power School, or is graded giving feedback? I'm pretty sure that parents, students, teachers are not all on the same page with that. And I think that's really at the issue of do you grade homework or not.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yep. Go ahead.
So, if you had your druthers, how would you change it? Or would you?
I want to keep the to complete classwork part in it.
Where's that at?
Number D, or item D.
D, okay.
I would not want to remove D. Because I do, and I would, so I'm not a parent, so I don't have that perspective really at all. But I would think that starting something in class and getting a start on it, so you understand how to do something, and then completing it at home, seems like a logical and reasonable thing to do for me. But I do acknowledge that I'm not a parent, so I haven't done that with a child. So
can I address that real quick?
Okay.
Just that for you that makes a lot of sense. For a parent who doesn't know how you want it to be done or what the expectation is, that's worse than a nightmare.
Yeah,
because they have no idea what the plan is or how it fits into the bigger picture. And it's a nightmare if the kid doesn't fully understand it, getting to complete that. Thanks for the interruption.
So a follow-up question back then, isn't the issue what the directions are, not whether we have started the activity in class or not? Because if we've started the activity in class, at least the student has some familiarity with it. If it's something that has not been started in class, and here do this at home with your parent, it's really critical that the directions are understandable by both the student and teacher. And it's a separate issue of clarity of directions.
Yeah, there's truth to that too.
How else would I change that, or how else?
I mean, you're talking about like the middle and, your perspective is more on the secondary, so looking at, the middle school and the high school.
Here's what I got from teachers at lunch today, talking to several that are they're teachers who are parents of elementary and middle school kids, and they agree they would like to see some type of for the district to facilitate where we can figure out how much and what type is being assigned in elementaries and middle and high school. One math teacher of AP and regular classes, she has elementary and middle school kids, and her middle school child has less homework than her elementary child. And we talked about her being stuck in she's doing a wonderful job raising kids, teaching responsibility and follow directions and work hard, but she's saying the math homework was, as a math teacher, she was way too much. But then she's caught not wanting to tell her child, hey, you don't have to do all this homework, the teacher is fine.
conflict.
So, if teachers of different subjects and different levels could understand what others are doing, that would be something that's not in this policy at all. That's a whole different way of addressing the problem.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to look at time here. We have 20 minutes till 7. We'll stop at 7, so hopefully about 5 till 7, if not before, we'll vote. Sean just talked. I have Corey, Randy, and Allison next. So Corey, Randy, Allison, Kelly, Audrey. Okay.
I'll go fast.
Oh, Jethro. Yes, Jethro.
So I would just like to focus kind of on this bottom paragraph where you were talking about if we're considering a best practice and how much I think the communicating with families is really the key here in the elementary world. So our school at LAD did a book study a few years ago on rethinking homework. And it was really what came, a lot of stuff came out of it, but one thing that came out is just communicate with the parents as to the purpose of this particular assignment. And right on the top, of anything that goes home, is this something that you want to see if the child has mastered? Like, did you teach it in class already and now you want them to practice it independently and see how they did? Or do you want the teacher, or do you want the parent to be explaining it to them and coaching them through and helping them? Like, what is it that you want to have happen when you get home so that it isn't so confusing? And that was really eye-opening for teachers to have to break that down. And they're like, well, if I'm sending it home to see if they're able to master it, then why don't I just give them a quick check at the end of the day and see if they got it? Like, do I need to do that as homework, or should it be reteaching? And do I want the parents reteaching this math assignment in a different way than how I taught it? Because then they're just going to be confused. And so that communication piece is, I just think, really important. And looking back at the fact that this hasn't really been addressed since 84 and 91, in the elementary school world anyways, we have a very different way of communicating with our families now. It used to be that we communicated through homework. Here's what you're doing in school today. Here's the homework that your child is doing. Whereas now, almost every classroom is using Blooms as a way to communicate. Kids are on Seesaw, another app where they're taking pictures of the work that they did and writing their comments of what they thought and sending that home. So there's a whole different way of communicating that I don't think it needs to be through homework the same way that it used to have to be through. And then just where I'm leaning as far as approving or not, and maybe you can help me understand, is I feel like leaning towards approving allows us to go out to the greater community to get more of that feedback. So I'm actually leaning towards approving it so that it can move forward, so that we can get more from the community. Mm-hmm. So that's right.
Thank you, Corey. Randy?
Well, listened to a lot of good information today. Compliments to the author. I think I'm now on the status of not approving it for a reason of, I don't know how long, a decade or more or less that I've been on this committee, but most of the things that come to us are discipline. Do we expel a kid forever? Do we suspend them for the year? Do we suspend them for 10 days? Do we cut their hands off? And you make a decision and it goes forward. And all of them are simple like that. This one isn't. This is very, very involved. And I'm not in favor of passing this because I think, even though compliments to the author, I think there's a lot of moving parts to this. This isn't one of those pick A, B, C, or D. There's a lot of moving parts. I've never seen anything anyplace close to this. Usually it's yes or no, black or white, or dark gray or light gray. However, my suggestion would be, when you come up with I don't like it, you always need some solution. I think it needs to go to some kind of focus group of teachers, parents from a wide range of demographics, so we have equality, and get this thing hashed out, because there's, like I said, a lot of moving parts, and something needs to be figured out there. You've already heard what I had to say about the let's get started in elementary school. If not for the student, at least for the parent. How am I supposed to be helping my kid do homework and calc if I haven't been doing addition and multiplication along the line, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to be helping with calc? figure, so maybe it's for the parents. I say that I heard.
I know, this is just one.
And the other thing is this grading deal. I'm really opposed to homework. You know, my kids bang their way through school. But, I don't tell them that. I don't like the idea if you got a B+ on the test, and if you do 16 pages of addition and turn it in, then we'll raise it to an A. I think that's garbage. That's not what life is about. I heard somebody speak on life too. I think this needs to go to a focus group, bottom line, and really get things together before it moves any place.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Next is Allison, and then Eleanor, and then Jethro.
So I'll speak as a parent, because I just had 2 kids in elementary, and one's in middle, and one's in high school someplace else right now. But for elementary, I like the idea, and it's also what you said about having, 10 minutes each, the 10-minute rule type of thing. I've had a lot of people come up and say, well, if I don't get any homework home, I don't go through my kids' bags, and I have no idea what's going on. And it's 2. Did I?
I think you voted in this.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
That is
I'm
so
looking at
funny.
Tammy Wilson. I'm thinking about Tammy Wilson. I'm so sorry. Tammy, I'm sorry. Yes, I did.
She likes the 10-minute rule, though.
I do like the 10-minute rule. I do like that.
Yep, that's good.
Besides reading, I don't think reading should be included in that, because that's just some, people can try to do every night. We know it doesn't work. But they have to practice. The kids have to practice. And whether it's graded or not, I mean, that's a different conversation, I think. But to practice those math skills, we used to practice in the car on multiplication tables on the way to school and on the way home from school. My kids learned them, but to practice the different skills that they're learning, especially your spelling and your math and your reading, and of course if you're taking an instrument, you're going to have to do it because you only get it once or twice a week. So I think those are important. Grading or not, I think is a different conversation. And it could be, we could do, 10 minutes of practice for each grade level, but I mean, just trying to give a solution for it. And then, and I get the problems in middle school and high school. I mean, how are you supposed to know what your science teacher is giving? It could be, this big project, which is going to, take 3 or 4 hours, and then and then somebody else is giving a 2-hour assignment that night. Next thing you know, you have 6 hours. And how do you know that without some sort of way to at least have that discussion amongst your departments as to what the norm is, so that you could be at least cognizant that if you give 2 hours, maybe I won't give 2 hours, maybe it'll be a 30-minute assignment, or maybe it'll be a 2-week assignment and not necessarily all due on that Friday, type of thing. But I think it needs more work and more discussion, and maybe a work session. And
okay, Audrey.
Yes, I agree. I like it. I like the policy, the beginning of it. I mean, I don't see where middle school and high schoolers can't have homework. I think it's just saying how much time is a consideration, which my daughter graduated in 2015 from high school. My son's in 8th grade, about to head into high school. And her parent-teacher conferences were so boring, because it's like, I wish I had 20 more of her. I used her class stuff for examples for the rest of the school year, and I could just sit back and cruise with her. With my son, it's like, oh my God, he's going to be.
You're in school, right?
And then now I've got a 3rd grade, a 1st grader, and then all the counseling that they need is a foster child, visitations with their parents, doctor's appointments. It's overwhelming, and then to keep them up in school as well. And the time spent is way more expensive for elementary kids than it is for my middle school, for my high school students. But I don't know. With my son, I'll probably have to do more with the high school students. But it's huge. So I really like where this is headed. I just I'm overwhelmed with the amount of homework that we get. And I say we because I am I am the one that the parent teachers talk to and say, what's going on? And it's like, well, we're all doing the best we can. I like where this is going.
Okay. Jethro, Kelly, and then I'm going to put Daryl on the spot because we haven't heard from him all night. Jethro.
All right. So, school board policy should be a simple document with very little guidance. I think what we're asking for when we're saying we're not going to vote yes on this, and we're going to ask for a work group, is an administrative regulation that more clearly defines. That's the education speak for what we're asking for. This should be a very simple thing that briefly states what's going on. To get to Tammy's point and to Sean's point, yes, we have too much content to cover. We need to trim that back. Teachers need to be empowered to be able to trim that back. This is one way that we can say, here's one way to encourage it to trim back is by taking away this resource of homework in elementary school and reducing it in middle and high school so that we can start that work. The only way we're going to be able to do that work is if we start cutting things away. The solution to this is not to make this more complex, but to simplify it greatly.
And how would you do that?
How would I do that?
Yes.
I would take off everything below what homework is defined as and say homework policies for the district will be defined through administrative regulation.
But then that would have to come forward at the same time.
Not if you're going to not if you redo the administrative regulation.
But normally on a big thing like this, we would require both at the same time, so we could see what we're actually approving.
You could. I'm just saying you could start with eliminating everything below whatever. Where did you just say? Below D?
Below the definition.
Oh, below the definition. That's very, very broad. And then you have to say, now go revise the administrative regulation and bring it to us. And the new policy wouldn't get implemented. You could say as a board, the new policy won't be implemented until we review the AR.
Yeah, and truly what this does by saying yes to this is this gets us started in that direction and gets us to free up parents who are frustrated, and will be a great sign of willingness to work with them if that's the case.
Okay.
Well, and doing it that way too, you could always make changes without having to bring it back.
Right.
What do you think about it?
Well, I'm just listening. I in some ways I want
to serve at the pleasure of the board.
I know. You know, this is not the Mill Highway policy. I mean, if I were write them all myself, right? But so no, I mean, so this is my job. I feel like is to listen to the guidance of the administrative team that has the discussion, to hear where it goes with the board, to look at the feedback, and then to see where it goes.
So Kelly's next.
Now,
I'll be very quick because I have another turn. If equity is the driver of this, it's a moving target, and it can't be. I mean, someone's life experiences and life environment can change daily. Death, illness, diagnosis. So I struggle with the equity piece. And I think that the value of homework is overlooked. If we're not assigning homework in elementary school, they don't know how to do it in middle school. And it's hard enough to get a middle schooler to do anything, let alone homework. And if they're not doing it in middle school, how are they going to do it in high school? And how are they going to do it? Quick search. 69% of high school students go on to college or continuing education. If they're not doing homework, how are they going to be successful in college when everything you do is outside of the classroom? The 10-minute rule, if that's a standardized best practice, why are we not promoting that? I mean, I don't feel that we shouldn't have to recreate the wheel. There has to be standardized best practice materials that we can support and educate parents on. Last thing I want to say is that the policy or the administrative regulation, something should address graded work and non-graded work. And I think that would help simplify a lot of things. Thank you.
Daryl, would you like to say anything?
I guess. I don't think there should be a difference between graded and ungraded work as far as considering it homework or not. It's work being done at home. Whether it's graded or not makes little difference. It's work being done at home. I take a very simplistic view of things sometimes, but I have kids. They went through school, just like everyone, not everyone, but a fair majority of the people sitting here. Some of them struggled, other ones went through easily. I do have problems with using homework to teach soft skills, like time management. You have people saying, well, I can't get it done in class,
So I'm assigning it as homework, and then homework's assigned as time management to learn time management. And that just doesn't jive. You know, a simplistic way of looking at things sometimes, but you know, I do have problems with that. You know, I need bifocals. I'm at that stage now where I'm going back and forth all the time. I apologize. I just don't want to admit I'm getting older. I just don't want to admit I'm getting older is the problem.
I accidentally left mine in my car.
I do agree that the requirement for teachers to communicate with all the other teachers to try to decide how much homework to assign is just unrealistic. I mean, you have 25 kids in a class, give or take. Each kid has 6, 7 different teachers. So you're going to go through all those, and that's just one kid in the class, you know. One class, you got, that teacher has, 6 classes, 7 classes a day. That's a lot of trying to communicate to get through to say, okay, can I assign this homework or not? Can I wait till next week to assign it or not? You know, that seems a policy to me should be something that's enforceable. Maybe I'm wrong with how it's defined, but it should be something that says, okay, this is how the school district says we should run things. And so if the teacher doesn't go through and check with every other teacher to make sure the homework is assigned, is that teacher at fault? Is if the student didn't learn because he didn't assign or couldn't assign or did assign? Or I mean, there's just so much open for interpretation. I think there's so much wordsmithing either left to be done, or as Mr. Jones has suggested, get rid of a bunch of it and let's wordsmith something else in its place. I think that's a fair option to do as well. As a finished document, I don't think it's done.
Okay.
I wouldn't say homework's complete. How about that?
Okay, hold on.
Super fast.
Okay, Tammy, Randy, Kelly. We're done after Kelly because we won't be able to vote.
Just a couple things this process. Where it says homework it will be directly to what is related and shall not be used as a disciplinary measure. I don't like that in that first paragraph. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that's the definition. It seems like it could fit better under required homework shall not be assigned. To me, that just reads funny. Secondly, I had several people ask me what exactly teachers will provide timely feedback to the student on submitted homework in order to address understanding related. That what people didn't understand exactly what that means. So that might be something to look at. And then the last thing, I can tell you right now, I know in the 5th and 6th grade in terms of the homework piece, that's where it's at. It's hard for those teachers. They feel very guilty not being able to cover all of the math curriculum, and that's where our homework is coming from. Driven out of fear that they're not going to get through it.
Okay. Randy and then Kelly.
I need to explain this time management thing a little bit further. I think I was misunderstood. It's not what you don't get done at school to do at night. It's your flag football, your hockey practice, your ballet. They're not all three, but one of those. Chores around the house, taking care of your dog, having dinner with the family or not, and everything else you do at home. That's the time management of doing your homework along with those 5 other activities in the evening is what I meant, not what you didn't get done at school.
Okay, Kelly?
Daryl, I agree. Work that's done at home is homework. I think that the reason I say introduce graded versus ungraded is because that can help achieve balance, or that can help achieve equity, because if Audrey knows that she's got this much homework and 3 assignments aren't graded, then she gets to make a decision that, you know what, this is important, but it's not graded, so we're going to let that go. So I feel like that's a tool that could be used to help achieve equity and balance.
Okay. So I'm going to close by asking everyone to either raise their hands, yay, we want to approve, or nay, we don't. I would like to, we've had a healthy discussion here tonight. That's the role of our committee. Lots of notes taken. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Barb, in the back, for taking notes, and I also have recorded this. I think this is a great example of why we bring policy to the committee, whether we approve it to go forward or not. one of the last comments Tammy made, I'm going to just reference this, is exactly why we probably, this is a Kraska opinion, this is not a district opinion, probably why it's a good idea to review policy more than every 20 years. We're not teaching the kids from 1984, and we're not teaching the kids from 1991. And as Tammy said, she doesn't like the second line. The second line here about shall not be used as a disciplinary measure, that's original language.
I know.
That's not new and that hasn't been edited.
Right.
And neither has the language at the bottom that's not underlined. So it's a good idea. Regardless of where we land, it's always a good idea, not just with this policy, but with all of our policies, to bring them forward and review them. And as Allison said, there could be a variety of reasons why they come forward. But good for the process, and thank you for the robust conversation. And with that, I will call everyone.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
And just to let you know, whatever the vote is, it's still going to first read.
Yes.
So it's still going to be in front of the board.
I wanted that clarification.
Yes, it still goes. We are the last stop before it goes to the board, regardless of recommend or not. It still goes to the board, and with that comes what did policy committee have to say. Okay. And so I'll ask you to raise your hands high, and Barb can help me count. Everyone recommending the policy as it reads here be recommended to the board, please raise your hand, which means yes, you approve it. 1, 2, 3. Was that a yes?
No.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3. Those who do not recommend this policy as it is written and as it reads now to the board, please raise your hands. 6. Okay, did someone not vote?
I don't know if you count me or not.
Oh, 7. Got it, okay. Yes. Wait, that didn't add up. I'm looking at Barb, and she's looking at me, and we're both going like this. It's like, no, something didn't happen. Because Barb said the same thing. No, that's good. Thank you. It's exactly 7 o'clock. Thank you, guys. We'll send I will just summarize for everyone after October 18th where this goes, in case you guys don't listen or watch the board meetings. And if we have reason to come back together regarding this, I absolutely will engage everyone. Okay, you can take the blue folders with you, but leave your name tent. Okay, so we can use them next time. Yep, it's right here, November 15th.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I put our tentative meeting dates on there. Tammy, if for some reason we need to come together before that, or if some reason there's nothing on November 15th, I would cancel it. Okay. It's on the front of the agenda.
All right.
And tomorrow, Barb will be calendaring these for our committee, so they'll show up, Tammy.
Okay.
Okay.
I think in your comments that everybody wasn't real negative about the whole thing. They
Right.
just thought it meant, so I hope that gets passed along.
Yes, absolutely.
Poo-pooing the whole thing.
Yeah, if someone walked in now and said, give me a one sentence,
Good.
I would say the vote was to not forward and it needs more work.